What do you get when you let a Range Rover Sport sit for 2 years with an already old Serpentine belt? Well, it was the worst belt I've ever seen. I bought this Range Rover Sport for $1,500, and it runs great, but I'm almost impressed that the Serpentine belt didn't disintegrate the first time we started it. And since we want to make sure that never happens, we're replacing it today. We'll be replacing both belts on this truck, as well as the tensioners and idlers, so let's get to it. So to change the belts, what we're going to have to do is start by removing this fan shroud, which has this coolant hose clipped in, and is connected by one tab here and two tabs down here. And I'll show you where those are. So let me pull that out. They're a type of tabs that you have to like squeeze to release. So once that's off, I'll show you how they work. There's a wiring harness clipped in right here. So the clips are like this. No, this one. These two are actually broken. Alright. This one is kind of broken. Okay. But let me just put this aside. And then down here, there is a harness right here on the bracket that the shroud connects to. There's an electrical harness, and that is what controls the fan clutch. So what's nice about this fan that's set up on this car, even though it's a belt-driven fan, is that if your fan controller fails, it fails along, which means that the fan will just run constantly. If you have an electric fan on a car and it fails, you've got no heat extraction, and your engine's likely to overheat. With this failing on, it means that it'll run no matter what with your engine running, and your engine will stay cooled, or at least mostly cooled, and you won't blow up your engine, which is nice. So I'm going to undo this connector, and then we'll move on to the next step, which is going to be to remove the fan. This is the connector right here, and then there's the clip right there that goes to the fan shroud that we just removed. Now, the fan, you see there's a bolt there, and it's on an idler pulley, which has 3 bolts going through holding it on. So the fan is threaded in reverse, which means to loosen it, you gotta turn it just like you're tightening it. So that's gonna be turning it the top that way. And so to do that, we have to hold the pulley in place, and we have to use a 36mm wrench. I have one pulley holder. These 2 hooks are going to go onto the bolts on the pulley, and one 36mm wrench, which we will be turning this way. And the reason it's reverse threaded is so that it doesn't come undone with the rotation of the engine. So since we're doing that, this is going to have to go that way, which means with the pulley holder and the wrench, you can break the fan free and get it started. But on my own, I wasn't actually able to do that, so I got some help to help get a little more leverage and strength into it. Nope. Need more strength. So you turn it clockwise.
What? Don't do that, especially if your radiator is good. Yeah. Our radiator is not, so... Yeah, that I figured that was going to happen.
It was caught on.
Well, no, we're going to have to...
Oh, it's clipped in there?
Yeah.
I forgot. This is the connector for the fan clutch, and it'll slide out vertically from the lower fan shroud. So with the fan off, the front belt is actually a really simple routing. It just goes over the balancer, over the idler, and over the tensioners, just a little triangle. And you can actually see this belt, you might be able to tell, is actually in pretty good condition. Well, just take my word for it. But someone must have been like, okay, well, I'll change this belt. And then they're like, nah, I don't want to change the back belt. That's too much work. But look at that. That is horrible. You can actually see just, it's like about to split. It's just horrible, horrible. And you don't want that failing when your engine's running. So anyway, that is what we're gonna get to. And while we're in there, we're gonna replace the tensioner. So for the front belt, this tensioner is a, what is it, 1/2-inch drive. So you can just use a breaker bar or something like that and just pop it in. And then we're gonna pull it towards the right, clockwise, and we'll pull the belt off. Now, if you happen to have a ratcheting breaker bar, you can use one of these, and that'll actually help. That could help you line it up. So, whoa, it's actually pretty strong tensioner. So get that off, pull it out. One thing to mention is when you're working down here, you want to make sure you don't damage your radiator, because you're going to be using tools to pull the idlers off and all that. And if you smash into your radiator, that's a whole other job. So one recommendation I've read is that you might want to put a piece of cardboard over here or a blanket. I'm going to do my best not to damage it, but this is the next thing after this is going to be to replace the radiator, because this one is leaking. So not as big a deal if something does happen to mine, but it'll probably be a big deal if it happens to yours, if you do decide to get one of these. This belt is pretty good. I mean, it's got some scuffs on it. Nothing too bad, but I'll be replacing it anyway. So with the belt off, we're going to remove this idler pulley, and these are 3 10mm bolts. So to do that, I'm going to use this 90-degree impact. There we go, 3 bolts. And the reason we have to remove this idler is that the bracket that this mounts to has 3 more screws behind it. So now with the idler off, you can see there's 3 screws, bolts, one here, and then one on the other side right there. And there's the cutouts, so you can use an extension to get to them. And then there's 3 right here, 1, 2, and then the third that holds this hose on. So we're gonna have to actually start with the one in the middle here, behind the hose, because that's the one that will allow us to move this a little bit out of the way. And then the others will be off an extension. All the bolts that hold this idler on are 8mm, and I was able to just break them free pretty easily with an extension with a little 8mm on. So I'm just gonna pull them all out and then pull that assembly out. Remove the middle of the 2 upper screws, and that allows you to flex this out of the way. So it'll come down to access the top screw, and the bottom one's already accessible. So you'll notice it has right here the tab that this uses has little ears that will help it stay at the right distance from the hole, so when you reinstall it, that'll give you a little bit of a hand. But yeah, I'm gonna continue and get the other 5 bolts off. I just removed one of the top 2 bolts, and it is a long one. So the one that retains the hose is a little one, and the one that actually mounts it is a long one. So this is the idler. It's as you can see, there's the 3 screws here, and then the 3 up top, the 2 mounting ones, and then the bracket for the hose. So now the tensioner down here is held on by 1 13mm bolt, and the reason it's held on by 1 bolt is that the assembly has 2 prongs that mount into metal, which prevent it from rotating. So that's how they use a single bolt. I'm going to remove that with my impact. And here we go. Got the 2 pins and our bolt that holds it together. That doesn't sound great. That's a good thing we're replacing it. So inside here, there's a spring assembly that helps push the belt out. You know, this one's getting replaced. Now, the back belt runs from the alternator up over here to, I believe, the water pump, and goes down over to the AC compressor, then down to the bottom corner, which is the power steering pump, across over the harmonic balancer, over onto the tensioner, and then back over that idler and around. And now to remove this, it's like the front belt. This is a, it should be, yeah, there's a hole right, a square hole right here for 3/8 drive. So slightly smaller. You can use a breaker bar on that as well, maybe with an extension. And we're going to push it to the left, and that'll allow us to release the tension on the belt. So to relieve, before I relieve the tension and remove the belt, I made a little diagram so that I can remember how it goes, because it's a pretty windy way. So a little step down extension on my big breaker bar. There we go, and we are pulling to the left. Yeah. Pop it off the idler. Boom. Ah, I hit my radiator. You can protect your radiator. It's stuck. Unless, oh, it's stuck. Oh, because it's resting. Oh, because the tensioner goes in front of the belt. Alright. One extremely good belt. Just the crunchiest. You can even, oh, it's just like, it's like holding a shape of where the pulleys go. Whew. Wow, that's bad. Okay, the tensioner is a 15 on this one. So the shroud comes out, little tab here, pull that, pop it up, and the same thing on the other side, right behind the coolant hose. If you're able to get your tool in without this being in the way, it's great. You can just remove it without removing the shroud, but I need to remove this anyway. And with that, it's out of the way for later, but you might not need to. And if you use hand tools, you'll probably be fine. Again, this is just one bolt with the 2 teeth to hold it in place. And we're replacing that too. Wow. Crunchy. So I've removed the tensioner, which was a 15. The idler is also a 15, and looking at the parts, this looks different. But that's because this is the updated design, and so don't be surprised if your part looks a little different. But this is the same diameter, it just has the guides on the sides. And that is also a 15 millimeter, so I'm going to be removing that. It's just, yeah, that should come out. I'm going to push this on the ground. So if your bolt is stuck, it's got a little plastic collar. You just push straight down on this. Almost looks like someone's punched it out before.
Someone did punch it out before.
So this might be the original, this might be a replacement. It's getting replaced again. So I'm going to put the smooth side towards the outside and the hollow side inside. Just try to push this in. There we go. Very good. Here we have our brand new tensioner, which is a Europarts C2S45579. And if you order both, if you're doing both your tensioners, the one with the smaller opening is the one that goes inside. It's still a 15. This is only going to fit on one way because of these. For the idler, we're going to 18 foot-pounds. Okay, and then for our tensioner, we are going to 30. Just have to reinstall our belt now. Okay, got my belt. Wow, this feels so different from the other one. Okay. Make sure it's all seated properly. Looks good, that looks good. Goes over the alternator, water pump, AC, power steering, harmonic balancer, tensioner, idler, alternator. Reinstall the fan idler assembly. These are all the 8mm. To make it easier to finger tighten, grabbing my finger tightening ratchet. We're tightening these 5 bolts to 7 foot-pounds. And you have to put the little bolt that holds the coolant hose. I'm going to put on the tensioner. It's also a 15. The one that came off was a 13, but who knows. And this will also be 30 foot-pounds, just like the other tensioner. There we go. Now, last step before putting the belt on is to remount this pulley. Just 3 10mm bolts. I didn't find the exact torque spec for these, but since the water pump idler, or the water pump pulley is held on at 7 foot-pounds, I'm gonna go with that too. Now our last step is to run the belt in, and this first part of running the belt in is to slide it behind the tensioner. And then that's it. And that's the fan belt reinstall, our tensioner, fan idler, and harmonic balancer. Just loops around. And that's it. It's both belts. Now, normally now you would put the fan back on, make sure your shroud is on, and then you just button it up and reconnect the fan over there, and put the top shroud back on. Now, I won't be doing that yet since I need to replace the radiator. It's been leaking on this side, and now it has fin damage from me banging into it while changing the belts. Again, if your radiator is good, make sure to protect it while you work on the belts. And that's our fresh, non-crunchy belts in place. Next time, we're fixing the coolant leak by replacing the radiator, so our work in the engine bay is almost done, but our work on this truck is far from over. Subscribe so you don't miss the fun. If you're enjoying this rebuild, be sure to leave a like or a comment. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.